I held a cigarette between my lips, hung my head and leaned against the wall, letting him press on me. After not seeing each other for 5 years, he has grown taller and stronger. The little brute wouldn't stop after touching my waist and kept reaching down. If you keep touching, something will happen. I squinted my eyes, grabbed his paw, and warned in a low voice, "That's enough." Matthew didn't struggle either. He placed his palm on my groin, bent down and pressed his head against my shoulder, smiling. "Brother, your body says you miss me so much." His tone was very proud. There was an air of arrogance without fear of consequences. I spoiled him like this. I pulled his hand away and slowly fastened my belt, saying, "Anyone who touches me like this would make me feel good." I lifted his head from my shoulder and looked at him carefully. He was still as handsome as ever. He had a face that could enchant me to death. However, I've suffered once because of his good looks. If I get tempted again, I'll be a complete idiot. I gently patted Matthew's face and smiled. "Well, you're just so-so. Once bitten by a snake, one is afraid of ropes for 10 years. Matthew is that snake." The year I met Matthew, he was just 18, wearing a white shirt and blue school uniform, looking very neat. He played the drums in a band at a bar. Among all those coquettish people, he stood out the most. That kind of innocent yet seductive feeling was extremely alluring. At that time, I had just been released from prison and was working as a security guard in the bar. I got into 7 fights in one night, and every single one was for Matthew. That kid would just casually throw a ring or a bracelet off the stage, and it would always start a dispute. Later, because of his irresponsible and flirtatious behavior, he was blocked by a few drunkards on his way home. Coincidentally, I was passing by the alley and saved his life. The kid's collar was torn, and he got slapped in the face. Watching me fight for him in front, he leaned against the wall and cheered me on. At that time, I thought to myself, how can this troublesome guy be so flirty? I knocked down those 2 drunkards. Matthew strolled over slowly, then lifted his foot and kicked one of them in the crotch, saying, "Still want to mess with your grandpa?" The man let out ear-piercing cries from the pain. I gasped in shock and pulled Matthew and said, "That's enough." Matthew immediately put on a sweet smile and said, "Thank you, bro, for tonight." Then he turned around and kicked the other one, stuck out his tongue at me and said, "It's fairer to kick one each." I was both angry and amused and turned around to leave. It's a waste of time to care about him. Matthew followed me all the way to the downstairs of my apartment. He said, "Bro, I have nowhere to go. Since you've saved me, please take me in for one night." I asked him about his parents. He said, "Both my parents are dead." I looked at his beautiful face and softened my heart for a moment. This moment of soft-heartedness not only led me to take him in, but also let him into my bed. Matthew can easily charm people when he wants to. He cornered me in the bathroom and asked, "Brother, they all want to have fun with me, don't you?" He tilted his head up and kissed my chin, saying, "I won't let them have fun with me. I'll only let you." Who could resist that? To be honest, the first time I saw Matthew on the bar stage, I had already imagined having fun with every part of him in my mind. Now he's right in front of me saying such things to me. Anyway, I couldn't resist. Later, when we got into bed, Matthew lay on me and said he was afraid of pain. I felt sorry for his young age and let him press on me. But once you give in, there'll be a second time. On one extreme occasion, Matthew pinned me down in the bar's stairwell, biting my nape with his canine teeth and saying, "Don't let others hear." The noise in the bar was so loud that this little commotion couldn't be heard at all. But Matthew liked to play like this. He thought it was exciting, and I was willing to indulge him. It was okay to get away the first 1 or 2 times, but as we slept together more often, our feelings changed. When I realized I had fallen for him, I said to Matthew, "Either date me or break up with me." Matthew looked at me, smiling beautifully, and said, "Brother, we've been dating all along. I gave my first time to you. Do you still want to break up with me?" At that time, Matthew was 18 and repeating his senior year of high school. He was young and didn't think about the future, but I had to. I had a criminal record and my life was already ruined, but Matthew still had a long future ahead. I couldn't let him hang around with me and end up in the gutter. I started to keep an eye on him and advised him to study hard. Matthew was also very obedient. He stopped fooling around and worked hard for the college entrance examination. To put his mind at ease, I quit my job at the bar and took care of his 3 meals a day to support him for the college entrance examination. At that time, I gave my whole heart. There was nothing left. But Matthew deceived me. I didn't believe it when my former colleague said he had seen him in the club. Later, I saw him come out of the club with a group of rich young men with my own eyes. Following behind them, I heard them chatting. "Hey, aren't you bored with that meal delivering guy yet? Break up with him earlier. I think the guy really wants to support you for the college entrance examination." Someone chimed in, "Does our Matthew still need to take the college entrance examination? He's going abroad in July. Matthew, how is it to play with that muscle guy? Was it exciting? I've never played with that type before." Matthew glanced at him, blew the scarlet cigarette butt, and said, "Open your mouth." He pressed the cigarette butt on that guy's tongue and said, "If you can't talk properly, say less." At that time, I wanted to rush up and beat Matthew up, but in the end, I just took out my phone and called him. Matthew looked at the phone and didn't answer. Someone beside him asked, "Matthew, why don't you answer?" Matthew frowned, looking annoyed all over, and whispered, "He's too controlling." When the ringing stopped, I called again. Matthew sighed, put on a smiling face, answered the call, and sweetly called out, "Brother." It almost made me laugh. The Sichuan opera face, changing performance should be given to him. He can really pretend. I said, "Matthew, turn around." My wrist ached and my mind was pulled back. Matthew was holding my wrist tightly. "Who has touched you? Who are you comparing me with? Has Big Brother tried many people in these years?" Matthew's tone was very soft and his eyelashes trembled slightly. As if I were to say yes, he would cry on the spot. I shook him off and smiled lightly. "It's none of your business." "Of course it's my business." Matthew raised his eyes, the corners of his eyes were flushed. "Big Brother is mine, only mine. You can't try with others. Idiot." Suddenly there was a sound of something being smashed downstairs. Then came Miles' irritated voice, "Where's Thomas?" "I want Thomas. Let him come here. Right now. Say I'm having an attack and ask him to come." Miles is the youngest son of my boss Joseph and Matthew's younger brother. For years ago, he was captured by enemies and almost lost his life. I happened to save him. He survived, but his legs were crippled. Therefore, Joseph recruited me to be a bodyguard in the Fong family. Perhaps because I saved Miles in an extremely dangerous situation, his dependence on me has reached a pathological level. When he was first rescued, he even wanted me to accompany him 24 hours a day. Otherwise, he would be restless and even go crazy. I pushed Matthew away and rushed downstairs. All the things that could be smashed in the living room had been smashed by Miles. He tightly grasped the wheelchair, his emotions were agitated, and he gasped for breath. I strode over, knelt in front of Miles, and softly said, "Young master, I'm here." When Miles saw me, he instantly burst into tears. His body relaxed, and he said, "Thomas, where did you go? I couldn't find you. I had a nightmare. I couldn't find you anywhere. I'm here. Don't be afraid." I picked him up from the wheelchair and walked upstairs. "I'll stay with the young master while he sleeps." Matthew stood on the second floor with his head down and his back straight. When I passed by, he grabbed the corner of my clothes, his voice hoarse as he whispered, "Brother." Miles huddled in my arms with his head down and the arm around my neck tightened constantly. Xiaoyan broke free from Matthew and started walking upstairs. Before Miles closed his eyes to sleep, he tightly held my hand and stubbornly said, "Thomas, don't leave, okay?" He was even younger than Matthew. Those little thoughts were so easy to guess. A child's possessiveness. I stroked his head and said, "I won't leave. Go to sleep." In the second half of the night, my boss Joseph called and said that Matthew had an accident. He ran out in the middle of the night to race with his enemies. The other side tampered with the car. Matthew's car almost plunged off the cliff. As a result, a fight broke out between the two sides. I'm in North City and can't get away. Thomas's, go and have a look. When I led people to see Mountain, it was in a complete mess. Matthew was holding a knife and about to stab it into Lincoln's eye. I cursed under my breath, called out to Matthew, and rushed over to hold his hand. "Calm down." Matthew's tense muscles gradually relaxed. He raised his blood-smeared face and said to me, "Brother, I almost died just now. It's not excessive for me to take one of his eyes, right?" He smiled and let go of the knife. "But if brother doesn't let me take revenge, I won't ask for it. Brother, I'll be obedient." He looked up cutely with bright eyes, like a puppy waiting for its owner's praise. "You like it the most when I listen to you." When he looked at me like that, it seemed as if I was his whole world. One could bully him wantonly, trample on him, and possess him. But it was all an act. I swallowed hard, averted my gaze, took his knife, picked him up, and pushed him behind me. I looked around, found a steel rod, and before the guy surnamed he could stand up, I lashed hard at the back of his knees. Revenge still has to be taken. It's just that Matthew can't be the one to do it. I was hired by the Fong family to do dirty work. I threw a business card at the wailing Lincoln and said, "Make a call. The Fong family will pay for your medical treatment. Treat yourself well and don't end up disabled." I threw away the steel rod, grabbed Matthew, and left. As soon as we got in the car, Matthew pinned me down on the driver's seat. Like a dog, he pounced on me and kissed me. He eagerly groped at my body, messing up my clothes. I struggled a bit. Matthew seemed to be enraged and firmly clasped my arms with great force. He didn't allow me to resist. There is still a difference from adolescence to youth. 5 years ago, it wasn't that easy for Matthew to hold me down. Now we are evenly matched. He kissed me randomly on my body and talked nonsense. I knew it. Brother wouldn't abandon me. You still love me. You are mine. From my mouth to my chin and then to my neck. He kissed me forcefully. It hurt a bit, but more than that, it was pleasurable. Just as he said, we are very familiar with each other's bodies. If this goes on, I'll be at his mercy again. When he kissed my lower abdomen, I grabbed his hair, pulled him up, and punched him. Get off me. Matthew licked his crimson lips and pulled my hand down. Brother, touch it. Feel how much I miss you. Gritting his teeth, he said, I miss you so much that I'm about to explode. I grabbed his neck and pushed him away. Stop pretending to be a lovesick fool. Matthew, you were the one who left first back then. Back then, my indulgence towards Matthew had reached an appalling level. It's still ridiculous when I think about it now. That night, when Matthew turned around and saw me, his face instantly went pale. I witnessed his panic, threw my phone at him, and said, Matthew, I won't care about you anymore. Just get out. When I turned around and walked away, there was a hole in my heart. Matthew chased after me and hugged me tightly. His hot tears fell on my neck and he said, Brother, you heard it all, right? I didn't mean what I said. I didn't mean to not go home. I'll be obedient. I'll definitely be obedient from now on. Shaking with fear, he randomly kissed my neck and ears and said, Brother, don't abandon me. He still had the nerve to cry and hold onto me tightly. It should have been me who cried. I pushed him away and said, Matthew, can you stop playing with me? I'm 28 years old. I just want to find someone to spend my whole life with. I can't afford to play this game. At that time, I really loved Matthew. Even though I knew he was a liar, I still loved him deeply. But I couldn't kneel at his feet and let him trample on me. I'm also a person, but Matthew didn't let me go. He was very good at pestering people. He squatted at my doorstep and pretended to be pitiful. He was like a dog and just wouldn't leave no matter how I tried to drive him away. He deliberately drank spiked wine in the bar and deliberately let himself be taken away in front of me. Seeing me getting angry and charging forward to rescue him, he then smiled and kissed me, saying, if you didn't come, I would have them, and then turned myself in. I trembled with anger and said, Matthew, do you really want to ruin yourself? Matthew was burning all over. He kissed my ears and Adam's apple and said, if you don't care about me, I'll ruin myself. If you don't care, you can leave right now and leave me to others. I couldn't leave. I can't do it. I can't bear to watch him play with others. Matthew is like a poppy. Once you get involved, it's hard to quit. I know he lies all the time and is very scheming, but I still plunge in without hesitation. It's like being possessed by a ghost. At the age of 18, Matthew pinned me against the door, kissed my lower abdomen, knelt in front of me, put his arms around my lower back, and promised me like a pious believer, Brother, I'll never leave you in my life. Will you forgive me? I grabbed his hair tightly. I thought, forget it. I simply can't let him go. I sloppily stitched up the wound in my heart and said to myself, trust him one more time, just one more time. And just when I was most addicted to him, Matthew left. Without a word, he suddenly disappeared. No explanation, no farewell, nothing. The vows that came out of his mouth are like farts. He can't change for the better. He'll never change for the better in his life. I didn't mean it. At that time. Matthew was eager to explain. I interrupted him. I don't want to listen. It doesn't matter anymore. When I wanted to listen to his explanation, he didn't give it to me. Now, I don't want to listen anymore. I tidied up my clothes and asked him, I just want to know, did you know there was something wrong with that racing car before you agreed to the race? Matthew laughed and openly admitted, yes, I did. He knew there was a problem but still got in the car and played with his own life. He used himself as bait to lure me. Matthew is very familiar with such tricks. He likes to deliberately stand on the edge of the cliff and watch me worry about him and fight for him. I was extremely worried while he was smug on the side. That feeling should be really great. He just has to beckon slightly and can easily stir up my emotions, making me spin around like a dog at his mercy. Really, it's so mean. 5 years have passed and you're still playing the same old game. Aren't you bored, Matthew? What are you trying to prove? That I still have feelings for you. I turned my head to look at him and said, to tell you the truth, if it weren't for Miles' order, I wouldn't have come to see you tonight. Matthew, you're no longer important. If you want to die, go far away and don't get me involved. The smile on Matthew's face gradually faded. If I'm not important, then who is? Miles? You've taken a fancy to him, so you don't want me anymore, right? His eyes were red and he was so emotional that he spoke without thinking. What's so good about him? He's not as good looking as me and he's disabled. Can he satisfy you? Do you really have the interest looking at his state? Or do you just like someone who's 18? Shut up. I raised my hand and slapped him, trembling with anger. Miles is your younger brother. Matthew, it's fine if you humiliate me, but don't humiliate him. Matthew had his head knocked to the side by me. His short, broken black hair fell down, covering his eyes. He didn't move for a long time. After a while, he raised his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his lips and said softly, Miles isn't my younger brother. He looked up, his black eyes cold, deep, and unnaturally calm. Brother, have you given your heart to him? How could you give what's mine to him? He doesn't deserve you. I'll show you that the only one who can match you is me. It was already early morning when we got back to the Fong family. At 4 o'clock, it was still dark outside, but the lights were on in the living room. Miles was sitting in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. Hearing the noise, he suddenly turned his head. Seeing me, his eyes lit up and he said, Thomas, you're back? Matthew followed up and stood behind me. When Miles saw him, he tightened his grip on the armrest. Looking a bit uncomfortable, he called out to Matthew, brother. Matthew didn't even lift his eyelids. I quickly walked over and squatted in front of him. Why did you wake up so early? Miles hung his head, looking a bit sad. I woke up in the middle of the night. You weren't there, so I couldn't fall back asleep. I felt a bit guilty. I promised Miles last night that I would stay with him. But I broke my promise. Miles scrutinized my face with his gaze, then suddenly reached out and touched my lips. Thomas, why is your mouth swollen? The cold fingertips touched my burning lips and I felt it was a bit strange. I kissed it. Matthew pressed against me from behind, leaned over, and pushed Miles' hand away over me. Look more closely. Maybe his tongue is swollen too. Miles pursed his lips, stared fixedly at Matthew with a pale face. Stop joking. Thomas's is a man and so are you. How could you? I took a deep breath, wanting to smash Matthew's head into the wall. I reached out to Miles and said, don't listen to his nonsense. Let me carry you upstairs to sleep a little longer. Before I could touch Miles, Matthew suddenly kicked Miles' wheelchair away for a certain distance, leaned over me, picked up Miles, and threw him over his shoulder. I'll take him upstairs to sleep. He turned his head and said, brother has been tired all night. Go and rest quickly. Unable to struggle free, Miles called out to me for help, Thomas. I didn't move. I let Matthew carry him away. Miles can't rely on me like this all the time. After all, I'm an outsider. Miles also hinted to me, saying, Thomas, you can't accompany Miles for a lifetime. He has to get over some difficulties by himself. In the past year, I've deliberately kept a distance from Miles. He made too much of a fuss last night. After Miles returned to Hangzhou, he gradually delegated some power to Matthew and said to me, Thomas, Matthew acts extremely. I'll be at ease if you keep an eye on him for me. Matthew doesn't act extremely. He acts recklessly. Being too ruthless and extreme can easily lead to making enemies. Although the Fong family is now in business, most of the people in the circle are former gangsters who have whitewashed themselves. If pushed too far, they may resort to violence. There were several times when Matthew was retaliated against and his life was hanging by a thread. The most serious time, he was stabbed in the stomach and had to stay in the hospital for 3 months. I smoked half a pack of cigarettes outside and then went back to tell Matthew, please, for my sake, cherish your life. Matthew looked sickly but still flirted, saying, kiss me and I'll cherish my life. He would obediently study after I kissed him. He would stop going to the bar after I kissed him. He would stay after I kissed him. It was all fake. I looked down at him and said, Matthew, stop being so cheap. The half year I spent with Matthew felt longer than 3 years. I was constantly on the go outside and rarely went back to the Fong family. On Miles' birthday, there was a banquet at home. Inside, it was brightly lit. I squatted in the backyard smoking. Suddenly, I heard someone call me Thomas. I looked up and saw Miles sitting on the second floor windowsill. He asked me, Thomas, if I jump from here, can you catch me? I almost swallowed my cigarette. Pointing at Miles, I said, don't move. Wait for me to come up. I ran up to the second floor and carried him down from the windowsill. There was already a layer of sweat on my forehead. Before I could scold him, Miles suddenly hugged my waist tightly with both arms. 142 days. Thomas, you haven't come to see me for 142 days. My throat tightened and I said hoarsely, sorry, I've been busy. I was really busy. But it was also a deliberate avoidance. Thomas, if I could move my legs, warm tears soaked through my clothes, then I wouldn't have to wait here for you to come see me. I could be like my brother and hold you. I felt a bit hot and tried to push Miles away. Young master, please let go first. Miles suddenly slipped his warm hand under my clothes and pressed on my lower back, whispering, Thomas, what Matthew can do, I can do too. Love me too. I suddenly realized that my body was abnormally hot and I didn't even have the strength to push Miles away. I was too nervous just now and didn't notice that there was a strange fragrance in the room. Judging from the situation, it was most likely an aphrodisiac. Miles left a trail of wet kisses on my lower abdomen, his hands trembling as he murmured with tears in his eyes. Don't push me away, Thomas, please. I held his hand. Before I could say anything, the door was suddenly kicked open from the outside. When I saw Matthew, he had already grabbed my arm and pulled me behind him. He punched Miles in the face. He picked Miles up from the wheelchair and threw him to the ground, then lifted his leg to kick. I shouted urgently, Matthew. I grabbed his arm forcefully. Matthew stopped and that kick didn't land. With his back to me, he said, Brother, can you not protect him in front of me? Turning his head, his eyes were red at the corners. I won't beat him anymore. Can you stop being a hero for others, okay? I really didn't have the mood to listen to his nonsense at this moment. Bearing it painfully, I grabbed his wrist and gasped, contact a doctor and give me an injection. Matthew didn't respond and carried me away. Miles screamed behind, don't go. Thomas, you're not allowed to go with him. I still had a bit of sense and knew what Matthew wanted to do. Saying word by word, Matthew, call a doctor for me. Matthew said, I'm the doctor. By the time we reached his room, I was already delirious with fever. When Matthew kissed me, I took the initiative, pressed him against the door, inserted my 5 fingers into his hair, held his head down, and fought for his lips and tongue. Matthew was also like he was on drugs, even more excited than me. Tearing open my clothes, he kissed my ears, neck, collarbone. Muttering to himself, Brother, I really miss you so much. We were like 2 wild beasts, both wanting to devour each other. We didn't even have time to get on the bed. The next morning, I couldn't even find the buttons of my clothes. Clothes were scattered from the door to the windowsill and the ornaments were knocked down all over the place. Matthew is not here. I stood by the windowsill and smoked a cigarette. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Miles, come here, 3rd floor, Ancestral Hall. The Ancestral Hall of Miles enshrines Lord Guan. Inside the hall, Matthew was kneeling upright. Miles was sitting on the sofa on one side with a rattan whip placed beside him. Fighting among brothers. Matthew, is this how you act as an elder brother? Act as an elder brother? Matthew sneered. You forgot, my mother only gave birth to me. Joseph lowered his eyes and said in a deep voice, if you don't admit your mistake, you'll take the punishment. Joseph handed me the rattan stick and asked me to do it. I opened my mouth and said, Miles, last night. The mistake doesn't lie with Matthew. Joseph raised his eyes and calmly but firmly repeated, Thomas, do it. I lowered my eyes and said, yes. No need to say more. Joseph knows everything. This is in the phone family. He knows all about what happened last night. He just wants to scold Matthew and protect Miles. By the way, give me a subtle warning. 100 cane strokes. Matthew didn't even bend his back and remained silent. After the beating, I sweated more than Matthew. Matthew propped himself up and stood up, leaned on me and looked at Joseph and said, are you still going to beat me? Can I leave if not? Helping Matthew out of the ancestral hall, he didn't say a word all the time as if he was thinking about something. At the corner of the 3rd floor, he suddenly pressed on my shoulders and whispered in my ear, brother, let me buy you a whip. If I'm disobedient in the future, you can whip me. Blushing, his lowered voice was a bit hoarse. Just now, when I thought it was you whipping me, it was really exciting. Xiaoyan said, Matthew. Ha! Don't be reckless. After sending Matthew to the room, Xiaoyan's phone received a message again, study.u. Xiaoyan clenched his phone and stood outside for a while before entering. Aren't you unfamiliar with each other? Joseph leaned against the balcony and hooked his finger at Xiaoyan. Come here. Xiaoyan walked over. Joseph tilted his head, raised his hand to push aside Xiaoyan's collar, rubbed the hickey on the side of his neck, and said in an even voice, "This spot is almost kissed raw by that kid. Why is Matthew okay but Miles isn't? Miles drugged me, but I slept with Matthew." Sure enough, he knew exactly what had happened last night. I said last night was an accident. Half of Matthew's good looks were inherited from Joseph. If we went back 20 years, Joseph probably looked similar to Matthew now. It's just that at this age, Joseph has hidden his edge and put on a gentle guise. Inside, he is also a madman. Thomas, 3 years ago, you told me you only wanted to be a bodyguard. Joseph's hand moved up and pinched my chin. Now you've slept with my son. Joseph is bisexual and has a lot of lovers outside. 3 years ago, when he was drunk, he asked me, "Thomas, do you want to give it a try with me?" I refused. Lovers are lovers and bodyguards are bodyguards. Joseph makes a clear distinction. He doesn't lack me. Joseph was just a bit interested. At his position, he could have anyone. There was no need to force others. I said I wanted to be a bodyguard, and Joseph used me as one. He never mentioned anything else again. But now, I've slept with Matthew right under his nose. Then I can't be considered just a pure bodyguard anymore. I said, "Miles, I can resign." Joseph laughed and let go of me. That's a stupid thing to say. After being with me for so many years, if you want to leave, I have to be willing to let you go. The Fong family isn't involved in clean business. Once you step in, you can't get out. I understand the truth. Keep an eye on Matthew for me, Joseph said as he straightened my collar. Don't let him play himself to death. I'm still waiting for him to carry on the family line. Looking down, he said, "You two can just have some fun, but don't get too serious." Although Joseph told me to watch over Matthew, he sent Matthew away for a month and took me to various social gatherings. In the private room, I got so drunk that my head was spinning. Joseph patted the boy on his lap and nodded at me. The boy glanced at me, walked over and asked, "Sir, would you like some water?" I lifted my eyelids and glanced at him. Then my gaze swept over Joseph. He was sitting under the dim light, his face blurred by the smoke. His cold and calm gaze was quietly fixed on this side. He doesn't trust me. Afraid that I'll cling to Matthew, he's finding someone for me. I lowered my eyes and drank the water from the boy's hand. I drank in a hurry, and the water overflowed from the corner of my mouth. The boy tilted his head and was about to suck it. I blocked his mouth and said, "Did you kiss someone else just now?" "There's only one other person." The boy's eyes widened. "Do you dislike me?" I smiled and said euphemistically, "Sorry, a little." The boy stamped his foot and ran to Joseph to complain. I thought lazily, how boring. Whether it's the figure or the face, it's far inferior. After blocking a few rounds of drinks for Joseph again, I ran to the bathroom to vomit. After washing my face, when I looked up, I saw Joseph standing behind me, offering me a handkerchief. I looked at his well-defined hands in the mirror and didn't take it. Joseph took a step forward, pinched my face, and lowered his eyes to wipe it for me. I struggled a bit, and he said softly, "Don't move." The handkerchief slid from my forehead to my eyebrows, nose, and the tip of my nose. "Adam said you thought he was dirty. Adam should be that boy just now." I didn't respond. "Do you think he's dirty? Or because he kissed me? Do you think I'm dirty?" I evaded his question and only said, "Miles, if you keep wiping, my face will be ruined." Joseph let out a laugh and threw the handkerchief on the sink. He pushed me and pinned me against the sink. He held my neck with one hand and went to undo my belt with the other. I didn't resist. If Joseph is determined to have me, it's useless no matter how good I am at fighting. Miles. After Matthew came back, he worked extremely hard. Do you know why? Joseph lowered his eyes, unmoved, and unzipped my pants. Because he wants to be recognized by you and wants you to look at him more. 5 years ago, you held Matthew's head and sent him abroad, but kept Miles. At that time, the power in Hangzhou was reshuffled, which was very dangerous. You couldn't take care of both sons, so you could only keep one by your side to protect him and send the other out to fend for himself. You gave up Matthew and chose Miles. You wanted to train Miles as your heir, but unfortunately things didn't go as you wished. You couldn't protect Miles. He was arrested and his legs were disabled, so he couldn't be the heir. You had no choice but to call Matthew back. If Miles hadn't been disabled, Matthew would never have returned to the country in his lifetime, right? After staying in the Fong family for 4 years and hearing so many gossips, one can naturally figure out some things. Joseph raised his head and looked at me through the mirror, his eyes cold. I looked him in the eye and said, I can understand all these things. Do you think Matthew doesn't? Matthew understands, but he's also stupid. Even now, he still thinks that if he makes achievements, you might look at him more favorably. At least, treat him as your son. Joseph's eyebrows twitched. No matter how estranged a father-son relationship is, they are still connected by blood. I continued. Miles, I can sleep with you tonight and with anyone else. You can use me as a weapon to kill Matthew. It doesn't matter. Anyway, you don't care whether he lives or dies. Joseph grabbed my neck from behind and said, Thomas, don't think too highly of yourself. It's not that I think highly of myself. It's that Miles thinks too highly of me. I pried his hand off and said, Miles, did Matthew plead with you when you sent him abroad? Joseph's eyes darkened for a moment and he was momentarily stunned. I broke free from him, lowered my head to fasten my belt and said, did he kneel before you? Was that the first time he bowed his head to you and begged you not to send him away? Joseph didn't answer. I've been with Joseph for 4 years. I know from his attitude that I've hit the nail on the head. It felt as if my heart had been stabbed with a fine and dense pain. It wasn't intense, but it was really annoying. I wanted to punch the boss. I took a deep breath, pushed Joseph away, and couldn't help but stab him. No wonder Matthew said his parents were both dead when he first saw me. What's the difference between his situation and having no parents? I angered Joseph and was sent out to do things, traveling far and wide for 3 months. When I returned to Hangzhou, I was almost a shade darker. Just after getting off the plane, Joseph sent a message, Tian Yuanju, room 601, pick up Matthew. The private room was in a mess. No one noticed when the door was pushed open. I looked twice before finding Matthew. He was leaning on the sofa holding a wine bottle in his hand. There were 2 young boys sitting on either side of him, holding glasses and feeding him wine. When they fed him, he drank. After pouring the wine, the boy went to undo his buttons and leaned in, seemingly wanting to kiss him. Matthew was leaning back with his face up and didn't move. I loosened my tie and strode over. The boy was completely pressed against Matthew, holding his face and coaxing. Yes, I'm your elder brother. I'm here. Does Matthew want me? I was so angry that I laughed. If you're his elder brother, then who am I? While the young boy was in a daze, I pushed him aside, knelt on one knee beside the sofa, propped my hand on the back of the sofa, and patted Matthew's face. Miles asked me to pick you up. Will you come with me? Matthew's gaze wandered around my face for a while, then he reached out to touch my face and murmured softly, Elder brother, why don't you want me anymore? He was out of his mind. The wine here contained a bit of aphrodisiac. I picked him up and carried him away horizontally. After helping him into the car, Matthew suddenly grabbed my collar and pulled me down and his lips bumped into mine. I was stunned for a moment, then held his head and kissed him back. Matthew turned me over and pinned me down on the car seat, closing his eyes and kissing me, starting from my lips to my Adam's apple and slowly moving down. He closed his eyes, called out to me, and shed tears. He looked very painful. He may not necessarily know who he's kissing. If I hadn't come, he might have slept with just anyone tonight. Calling out my name, shedding tears, and kissing someone else. Can I blame him for that? Can I say that he doesn't love me? This is what I'm most afraid of. Matthew is too willful. He is very extreme. He doesn't cherish himself and doesn't take himself seriously. If I don't watch over him, he doesn't care if he ruins himself. Being with someone like him is so tiring. I'll be in a state of unease all the time, afraid that if I don't keep an eye on him, something will happen to him. Matthew won't change. It was already midnight. I didn't take Matthew home. I got a room at a hotel and just made do for the night. The next day, I woke up early. After I finished washing up, Matthew was still asleep. I was going to leave first. When I went to the bedside to get my phone, I was suddenly grabbed by the wrist and pulled onto the bed. His scorching body pressed against mine. Matthew pinned me down, burying his head in the crook of my neck. Brother, have you ever been with Joseph? I stiffened all over. Why would Matthew ask such a question? Before I could open my mouth, Matthew suddenly bit me on the side of my neck and I gasped in pain. Brother, say you didn't. It's okay to lie to me. My neck was wet with tears. Please, if you say you didn't, I'll convince myself to forgive you. I sighed and said, who told you that? Matthew's body stiffened for a moment, then he suddenly rolled out of bed and started dressing silently. He also took the gun from my waist. Before he went out, I grabbed him and asked, where are you going? Matthew looked at me coldly and said, to Joseph. My temples throbbed. I didn't sleep with Joseph. I'm asking who spread this rumor to you. Can you understand? Matthew's eyes instantly turned red. Stop lying. He took out a photo from his pocket and threw it at me. It was a photo of me and Joseph in the club's bathroom. Joseph was holding me down and undoing my belt. It really looked like we were having an affair. On the photo, Joseph's head had been poked through. There weren't many people who could have taken such a photo. Apart from Joseph, it could only be Miles. It was unlikely to be Joseph. He didn't want to fall out with his own son yet. Then it's given to you by Miles? Matthew glared at me resentfully and acquiesced. I found it a bit funny seeing him looking like a wronged fool who had been let down. Don't worry, I didn't sleep with you. I didn't even take off my pants. Then what's the deal with the photo? I couldn't explain it to him, so I just said it's just like that. Matthew was obviously dissatisfied. He opened his eyes wide and tears welled up one after another. Brother, you're so heartless. Now you don't even bother to explain to me. You don't love me anymore. I was so angry that I laughed. Matthew, who is the heartless one between us? The pent-up anger instantly flared up. It was you who lied to me, you who went abroad without a word, and you who has been pestering me since you came back. Miles gave you the photo and you just made wild guesses without even asking. Then you went out to get drunk. If I hadn't gone to pick you up yesterday, you wouldn't even know who was in your bed this morning. Fortunately, I don't love you anymore. If I still did, you'd break my heart and feed it to the dogs. By the end of my speech, my eyes were getting sore. Matthew panicked and rushed to hug me clumsily. No, brother. I wasn't drunk. I knew it was you. I saw you as soon as you came in last night. I was pretending. I wanted to make you jealous. Don't be angry. I'm yours. I'll never let anyone else into my bed. I'm not stupid. I can tell who I'm kissing. If I dared to sleep with someone else, you'd have left long ago. He got even angrier. I punched Matthew. I knocked the person to the ground and kicked him again. Is it fun, you idiot? After finishing the business, he returned to Fong family to report to Joseph. In the study, Joseph leaned back in his chair and said, Thomas, you should follow up on the project in North City. I said, thank you, Miles. When I was leaving, Joseph said it's best not to come back to Hangzhou. I agreed. When leaving, I passed by the garden. Miles was sitting on the second-floor windowsill and timidly called out to me, Thomas. I turned around. Miles gave me a smile, beautiful yet pale, and said, if I jump down from here, can you catch me? I looked at him for a while and said, Miles, no one can catch you. That's your own life. I turned around and left. I caught a faint sorry in the wind. Miles doesn't necessarily like me that much. He just regards me as his possession. He doesn't want to share his possession with Matthew at all. North City isn't big. It's much smaller than Hangzhou. Joseph acquired several large factories here, and I went there to be the general manager. It can also be considered a promotion. When Matthew came to find me, I was bare-chested and carrying goods with a group of workers. It was just out of sheer boredom. Joseph asked you to be the manager, not a worker. I didn't respond and wiped the sweat off with a wash towel. Matthew started to criticize my office. The desk was bad, the chair was bad, and even the small ornament on the cabinet was criticized for 800 words. I was out of temper and washed my face and asked, what on earth do you want to do? Matthew stared at me and said, I want you to go back to Hangzhou with me. I said no. Matthew got angry and said, look at what kind of life you're living here. You weren't fair-skinned in the first place, and now you've gotten several shades darker. When you stood in front of me just now, I thought you were a human-shaped chocolate bar. Then he touched my crew cut and seemed to be regretting something, saying, you've shaved your hair. How handsome you looked with your previous hairstyle. Now if you were put in a crop field, I wouldn't be able to tell you apart from a peasant. I felt like laughing a bit. Looking at Matthew, I said, young master, I'm originally like this. I originally belonged to this class and should live such a life. Just because I wear a suit and tie doesn't mean I'm of the same kind as you. I'm still lucky. At least I got the position of general manager, which is better than many people. I'm very comfortable here, more comfortable than in the Fong family. I've spent half my life braving the wind and rain. For the rest of my time, I just want to live a stable life. Hangzhou is too big for me. Matthew stopped being fussy. After a long silence, he lowered his eyes and said, but I miss you so much. I swallowed and turned my head away, saying, forget about it earlier. Miles is waiting for you to carry on the family line. Matthew looked up and stared at me faintly, saying, brother, sometimes I really want to kiss your mouth raw. He pounced on me and kissed me, saying, carry on the family line? I'll make Joseph have no descendants. I grabbed his hair to avoid his kiss and said, don't you think I'm a human-shaped chocolate bar? Matthew tried to undo my pants and said, I love chocolate. Let me have a bite. Matthew told me that on the day his mother was kidnapped by Joseph's enemies, Joseph was waiting outside his mistress's delivery room for Miles to be born. By the time Joseph went to rescue her, his mother was already dead. Matthew hates Joseph, and Joseph doesn't like Matthew either. Matthew hugged me tightly, really tightly. He said, brother, no one loves me, no one cares about me, and no one protects me except you. No one ever told me to take care of myself, nor did anyone tell me how to love others. I didn't know how before I met you. I'm very childish, right? Sorry, bro. I just really wanted to prove that you'll always love me. His temples were damp. He murmured in a dreamy voice, bro, don't leave me. Don't give up on me. Teach me. I'll try hard to learn. I'll learn to love you by imitating you. His pillow was soaked with his tears. He was just like made of water. I stroked Matthew's head, hugged him back, and sighed, all right, go to sleep, crybaby. Early the next morning, Matthew was called back to Hangzhou by Joseph on the phone. I still stayed in North City, drinking tea, playing cards, and watching the sunset, living an old-fashioned life. Matthew would come to North City whenever he was free. When he came, I'd accompany him and listen to him talk. When he left, I wouldn't stop him and just continued to drink tea, play cards, and watch the sunset. Once when leaving, Matthew said, bro, I always feel that you don't love me as much as before. I could see Matthew's disappointment. He was already 26, but his look at me was still as passionate and as anxious as when he was 18. I knew what Matthew wanted to hear. I didn't want to say it because I was afraid. I was afraid that if I gave too much, he'd start to waste it again. I don't have the capital to be wasted anymore. However, I'm willing to be honest. I said, Matthew, it's not that I don't love you anymore. I'm just scared of being deceived by you. You're so eager to confirm my love for you. Have you ever thought that I might also feel insecure? Matthew looked at me for a moment, then pressed his hand on my forehead and touched my nose with his. It's okay, bro, don't worry about it. It's okay if you don't love me that much. As long as you stand here, let me love you instead. Later, Matthew fell out with Joseph. The reason was that Matthew took the household register and dragged me to get married abroad. Joseph called North City. Matthew leaned on the balcony in the middle of the night and got scolded. Joseph's voice came out faintly, if you like him, just keep him. Why do you have to get married? Matthew, what kind of normal person gets married without a marriage certificate? Joseph was extremely angry. He's a man. Dad, he's an old-fashioned person. Without that certificate, he won't feel secure. Matthew said it has nothing to do with whether he's a man or a woman. I love him and I want to make him feel at ease. It's that simple. You've never loved anyone or been loved, so you don't understand. I heard Joseph scolding even louder. The night was very quiet. I could clearly hear Joseph's broken, down voice. However, Joseph accepted it after scolding. Later, Joseph called me and said, Thomas, you're really something. In his whole life, Matthew has only bowed his head to me twice, and both times were for you. If it weren't for protecting you, he would never call me dad again in his life. I smiled, squinted my eyes, and whispered, I'm not that capable. Miles, you don't understand. Looking up, I saw Matthew fiddling with my 2 pots of almost dead flowers on the balcony. I shouted, Matthew. He turned around. I said, I love you. Matthew's eyes lit up immediately. Just like when he was 18.